Jesus didn't have a problem with people that's in the streets. He had a problem with religious people.
How can I help anybody when when I was not even able to help my own son?
I would never do that. I would never do that. And I became that in a matter of minutes when they took my pain pills away.
And I said, I'm not where I want to be, but thank God I'm not what I used to be.
This is Faith in Your Recovery. I am Randy Davis. Welcome to the battle. Welcome and greetings to all of you, our listeners. We appreciate you tuning in and turning on to today's program of Faith in Your Recovery. I'll introduce our guest shortly. He comes to us. I shouldn't say he truly comes to us, but remotely comes to us from Oklahoma City, in Oklahoma, of course. So we're looking forward to his sharing his story. I've been able to read up on it. His personal story, the work he's into, you're going to be blessed. Welcome, George Zerker. We appreciate having you.
I appreciate you having me here today, guys.
Well, it's a good thing, and I know we're going to get a lot from it. What is it that even interested you in being on our program, George?
You know, I was thinking about that actually. It was either earlier today or yesterday on how I even connected with your colleague, Miss Candy. And I want to say it was just through each of us doing our parts for our respective missions. And somehow we came across each other's contact. And just through hearing what you guys are doing up there in Indiana, part of what I do now is to find the who, what, when, where, why, and how in every other state. And I hadn't had one in Indiana. And so just through talking, the idea came up, and I said, one thing I've learned in my sobriety is you say yes to everything, even if it's scary, or even if you don't know, as long as it's not negligent, say yes. What's the worst you're going to miss out on? So why not? I love it.
I've got that same principle. I just always word it differently. I'll walk through any door that's open, then I'll decide if I want to stay in the room or not. And it's allowed me to be open to so many things. It's allowed our ministry to grow. Sharing this time with you is a privilege for both of us. And I look forward to what we can help our listeners accomplish by staying with us for the next 45 minutes. So, George, let's go back to that white picket fence that you just mentioned, and I've read about it in your bio. Tell us about that time in your life.
So that white picket fence stemmed from, I got placed into that white picket fence. So when I was 11 months old, I was adopted. I was taken out of a home in Wichita, Kansas, where there was a lot of drugs and abuse. Things to this day that I'm not even entirely sure about the details. All of that knowledge came to me through court documents and through my current loving parents. And so as I grew up, the town I was in, real small outside of Wichita, about 800 people. It was the neighborhood where you didn't lock your car doors at night. It was the neighborhood where everybody knew everybody. 4 blocks down, they knew who George was. Every teacher knew who George's parents were. They hung out with your parents at church. So that white picket fence was a protected community where God was in it since I could ever remember. So I didn't know bigger city stuff. I wasn't exposed to that. It was church on Sundays, church on Wednesdays, sports on the other days, tournaments on the weekends, and coming home to a loving mom and dad that chose me.
I love that lifestyle. Unfortunately, it's a thing of the past. There's not not nearly as much of it as our society and culture could use today. Once you stepped out from behind that picket fence, what did the world look like to you, George?
It was fast. It was fast, and it was status chasing. It was, how do you become the guy? How do you be the one that was better than everybody else in terms of job title, money? Did you have the boat? Did you have the nice car? And so transitioning that into Wichita, you start to become exposed to things that weren't in that community. but I knew what my morals were. So everything was just sped up. It was just fast, and it was time to lock in and to make something of myself per se. Um, so with that fastness, I adapted because I love fast. I never been diagnosed ADHD, but there's not a doubt in my mind that I'm just 100 miles an hour constantly. And so I have to stay busy. And through college, you know, when I stepped out and I went and got a degree, I studied criminal studies and psychology. Wanted to work for the FBI. That was my dream. That was my dream. And so through that fastness and when I started to party a little bit in college, kind of at that age where it starts and it's just normal, it's just what you do. I realized, okay, so not only am I an extrovert, but now I can be an extrovert that's not scared to say anything to get farther up that status chain, to be closer to those goals of having the money, having the house, living a life that I saw in the white picket fence, which was really just blue collar hard work for 50 years, but I wanted it in 5 years. And so, how do I get that in my early 20s? And so ultimately, that wound up with me finding myself in the finance industry. And so that was going to tailor to my this high-end chasing lifestyle. And so, kind of without going too much to answer you, as I stepped out, it was just a lot. It was overloaded. I go from 800 people to 500,000 of a city, and now I'm working in the corporate world in my early 20s.
That had to be culture shock all the way around.
Yeah.
And with your ADHD, it allowed you more opportunities and privileges, good, bad, or ugly. And I know, you've got that degree. I hear the good, I hear some of those other things, but I know not all of it was something that was going to edify you or anybody else. Tell us about the struggles that came with that cultural change.
So, you know, coming from the family that there was no doubt that Jesus was the center of it, I viewed their lives as boring, nonchalant, box checking. And so when I stepped into all these opportunities, I was like, okay, this is it. This is where I get to start being an adult and live my life with my Christian values, but in a much larger space. And so as I pursue the job in finance, I ended up working for like the second largest bank in the US. They're globally known. And so at 21, you hand me a suit and tie job. And I should preface that with I love nice things. I love dressing up. I dress to impress type of thing. That was my ego. If I look better than you, I am better than you. That's how I used to think. And so you tell me I get banker's hours and I can hit the golf course on Monday and Saturday and make more money than my friends. It's like, this is it. This is life starting to cultivate for me. I'm finally starting to see that success. And through that, you know, drinking had gone from a weekend thing to, oh, I have the money now where I can do it after work. That's just what you do. You go out for some drinks with your coworkers and it's fun because you're young and all these people are in their 30s and 40s and I'm 21 and I'm doing what they're doing. And I'm like, this is where I belong. This is where I'm
Playing
supposed to
with
be.
the big boys.
Right? Yes, absolutely. And all my friends who are struggling to make ends meet, trying to chase that degree, driving a 2002 Honda Accord while I'm driving a Roush Mustang, I'm like, all right, I'm doing what I was supposed to do, and it's go make a name for myself. And so through the course of that, the struggles started to become more apparent in the fact that I liked myself better after a few drinks. And so over the course of a couple years, the weekend became a few after work on Monday and Thursday. And then it became 6 or 7 every day after work. And then I realized I live close enough to the bank, I can go home on my lunch break and I can drink. And then when I go back and talk to people about how they manage their money, I'm a little looser and it's not as nerve-wracking. And then I realized I could do it before work. And before you know it, it's a cycle of before, during, and after that wasn't a problem in my eyes because I was having fun. My family had no idea. I was the life of my friends. They always wanted me to be around because I just brought that energy. And it was because I had no inhibitions. I had no fear of saying anything. And combine that with the ADHD, it's like, yes, this is awesome. You work, you go out, you have fun, you sleep, you go work. It's just this repetitive cycle. Um, Throughout that time as well, I was introduced to Adderall for my ADHD, which that just made the world make sense. Everything, for most people, if you take Adderall, everything speeds up. For me, it slowed down and I was able to compartmentalize. And I was like, yep, I just became 100 times better at everything I do, whether it's fixing, processing, analyzing. And so I get on that train, and I didn't know you could abuse it. But I found out real quick that you could. And so between those two and working at the bank and climbing the chain there, getting promoted a month after being there, after 2 years, I'm like, well, I don't want to work in the law field anymore, so I'm going to pursue this. And guess what? Now that I don't have to pursue the law field, that whole clean cut white picket fence, stay away from the street drugs motto that I had deep within, that goes out the window. And so now I can try cocaine for the first time. I can start experimenting with other items, and that just elevates it. And so it became this four-way concoction of drinking, Adderall, cocaine, and smoking that where I felt invincible. And I needed you to know that I was invincible. But the thing is, I didn't have a problem because I had a car, I had a place, I had a job, I was farther along than you. And
And
so
it
that's real.
sounds like you were able to remain functional during all that usage. Highly functional would probably be more accurate. Is that true?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. So this isn't something, I ever wanted to admit to my family. Like, that's just not something you did in our community. Drinking it was a sin, and sin was sin, and you didn't do it. You sure in the world weren't going to do street drugs? Like, that's not how we were raised. And so before you know it, I'm 24 and I'm like, whoa, how did I go from this 19-year-old aspiring kid who got a degree in 2 years to I'm doing street drugs and drinking and taking Adderall every day? It's no big deal, right? Well, being raised in the Christian home, there was no question right from wrong. I've always known right from wrong. I started crossing that line on what was wrong, as most of us do in this world, and became a liar, causing problems, stopped seeing my family as much. And the girl that I was with at the time, who was actually my fiancée briefly, I was not being in any way biblically loyal to her. And so I thought I could get away with that. I thought it was my world and that you were going to do what I was going to say and I could manipulate. And so about 3 or 4 years in, 24 years old or so, around October of 2023, everything came out in the wash. And I'm sitting in my house during the day, and all of a sudden, just the truth spilled out. Everything came out from the dark. People came forward that said they'd never come forward, and so I'm out. I'm out there. Everything I've done, everything I've quote unquote built is out there. And so that causes me to retreat back to mom and dad. And what a humbling and egotistical blow that is, to have to ask your parents if you can go back and live with them for a year while you quote unquote recover. And not even recover from the drugs and alcohol, just recover for life. At that same time, my work performance started to go down because I started losing that focus. I started losing that functioning because I tell people I had three things. I had drugs and alcohol, I had my job, and I had that woman. And Jesus was nowhere in that equation at the time. He was a weaponized idea that I would keep in my pocket because I knew what sin was. And if you didn't, I was going to tell you you were sinning. And so now I'm down to two things. I'm down to drugs and alcohol, and I'm down to my job. And one is taking out the other very clearly. My job approached me and asked me to get help because it was no secret. Through nights out with them, it wasn't casual. It might have been casual for them, but it was me trying to black out on a Monday when we had to be at the office at 7:30 the next day. And obviously they cared, and they're like, yeah, we can get you help. And that wasn't a thing. You didn't ask for help as a man growing up in my world. You figured it out on your own. The
I
typical
know
stigma.
that world.
Yeah. And so, nope, I don't have a problem. And so for the next 9 months between October 23 and September of 24, I just went on a tyrant. And my friends stopped hanging out with me. My mom, I didn't really want to be around them because there was a weight that they had handpicked me. They chose me at 11 months old to give me a life I didn't feel like I deserved. And they raised me in this family, this white picket fence family, where everyone else is succeeding and no one else had these problems. And if I have these problems, I've failed them. I make that entire decision a waste on their part. That's how I viewed it. So I couldn't ask them for help. And so I just drowned in it. I figured someday it would change, or I'd make more money, and it was just slowly coming to an end. And after 2 wrecked vehicles, run-ins with the law, I got to a point where I did not want to be alive anymore. I remember going to the part of town in Wichita that you don't really want to hang out in. I remember I'd had my conceal and carry at the time, and so I drove down there with that. I drove down there with my gun, and I made it visible to people, hoping that someone would take it as a threat and hoping that someone would do something about it. Because I didn't have the guts to take my own life, but I wanted somebody else to. And so that's how dark and scary it had gotten, because I didn't feel like I could talk to anybody, and I was alone. And I went from the extroverted, successful guy wearing a suit and tie to a guy that can't even keep his car intact, that's lost his job, that's the lowest performing individual in the branch, that couldn't sleep at night without waking up at 2 a.m. to drink vodka to keep himself from getting sick. And so how do I go from that in just 4 years? You're only 25, George. You can't be an alcoholic. I've fed into that lie. I was too young to be an alcoholic. Well, I found out that's not true. And so in September, it all came to a culmination when I walked into my place of work and I looked at somebody in front of about 20 other people and I told them I was going to take their life. They don't like that. You can't do that at work. And so they asked me to go home. And I wake up later that day to 3 of my coworkers talking to my mom, begging her to get me help. Because even though she knew there was a problem, she didn't know it like my coworkers knew, because I never let her in. And she's the one person I didn't want to know, because she's the one person I might listen to. Well, little did I know, my mom had been speaking to the pastor at our church, and he knew about this ministry called Hope is Alive. She was going there quite often, tears in his office that I never knew about. And she looked at me with tears in her eyes, I'll never forget, and she said, what are we going to do? And at the flip of a coin that day, I was like, take me. I was so drunk, I was willing to go. And so they took me to a treatment center there in Wichita. And, well, actually, I should back that up for a second. 10 days prior to that is when I got arrested. So there was 10 days where I got arrested by one of my better friends that worked for the Highway Patrol. And I knew them because I wanted to work in that field, so I did all my networking to know who, know how. And so I ended up getting arrested in Wichita. That wasn't enough. Manipulated my
What were the charges?
driving under the influence.
Okay.
Yep. Woke up behind my steering wheel, parked to one of the guys I knew pulling me out. And the sad thing is, I tell people this, the sad thing is he wasn't even quite sure I was drunk. He said he had an idea, but he wasn't sure. And then when I blew 5 times the legal limit, the second highest in the state of Kansas in 2024. And that was a staple moment, because if he wasn't sure, I had trained my body to get to that point, which is terrifying. I shouldn't have been
That
alive.
has to be a near medical possibility, okay? I
Yeah.
don't know how else to word, at least improbability. But yeah, to put that together, wow.
Yeah. And so that wasn't enough. I had my dad go take me to get my car out of the impound, and I remember getting it, and the trooper had missed, there was probably 60 or 70 bottles in the trunk, and he had missed a couple, and so I go right back at it the next day. I keep going for 10 more days, and then that's when the event happened at work. And so then fast forward to my mom taking me to treatment. I show up to treatment almost the same level, 1/10 away from blowing the same thing when I walked into treatment. And I remember meeting this gentleman. He gave me a tour, and we come to find out that we knew each other through mutual friends. And So I spent about 39 days in treatment, 17 of which were in a medically supervised detox. I didn't know anything about treatment. I didn't know anything about delirium tremens. I didn't know the risk for stroke. I didn't know the risk for seizures.
Tell the folks who may not know what you're talking about. What are those risks? What are they about? What do they do to the body, the mind, soul, and spirit?
Yeah,
Fill in anybody who may not understand, please.
yeah, and I still try to learn more about it to this day, but essentially, it's just like you hear people that the more common one is smoking cigarettes. You know, you can't just quit or your body has a reaction. Same thing with alcohol, but it's a lot more severe. And it's severe enough to the point where your body will shut itself down or it will start attacking itself because it doesn't know how to function without the alcohol in its system. And so you have to be medically supervised and have medications put on to where your brain doesn't essentially stroke itself out or your nervous system doesn't trip you into seizures. The shaking is uncontrollable. Your body doesn't know how to act. They called me they called me like Shakes the Clown is the name I got in treatment because of how bad I was shaking for 2 weeks. And so it's a high medical risk of withdrawal, which is why if you are withdrawing or you know somebody that ever wants to do that, is you never want to try to do that on your own.
Man, I've told people in my years of experience with a better life, Brianna's is hope. When you're coming off the drugs, you're trying to get clean, you're going to feel like you're going to die. If you do it with alcohol, it can cause that. It can kill you without that proper, medical treatment and somebody who understands what's going on. Okay, we'll go back to you there. Go ahead, please.
Yeah. And so after I start to feel somewhat normal, this is almost 2 years ago. I had been drinking since I was 18. I have maybe 19 days under my belt of not drinking in this facility. And my ego comes forward, and I'm like, well, if I'm going to be sober, I'm going to be sober better than anybody else. Because while I'm in there, I'm hearing about people that are in and out, and it's just this lifestyle. They know the system like it's jail. And I'm like, well, that's weird because I don't even know where I'm at. And so I remember breaking down and crying in front of the mirror one night and saying, God, I give up. I've driven long enough. It's your turn to drive. What's next? Like, I promise I'll follow you. Just please don't take me back to where I was. And don't let me go back to where I was. And so I started asking some of the leadership there, what do you recommend? How do you recommend I stay sober? Because in my head, I'm thinking, I'm going to go back to the bank and I'm going to just do it sober. And he looks at me and he goes, you need to go into sober living of some sort. And I was like, well, that's not me. Whoa. I mean, I might have a problem, but that's not that big of a problem. And I kind of caught myself. I said, okay, he said it. One of my buddies told me about Hope is Alive. My mom has told me about Hope is Alive. This guy tells me I need sober living. I said, okay, God, that's 3 things. You're telling me an answer here, and I needed to accept it. And so I go ahead and just muster up the courage to call one day. I said, hey, I'm interested in your guys' program. And I was talking to this gentleman named Chris, and he was so kind on the phone. I remember he said, oh, you're all good, man. Just come on over. We've been watching you. And little do I know, my mom had already pretty much applied for me and secured a spot some way, somehow. And so fast forward, I get out of treatment and I show up to this house in Wichita, Kansas. And I thought sober living was a house with, boarded up windows in the part of town you didn't want to live in. And I pull up to a 6,000 square foot, what looks like a mini mansion in my opinion. And I walk in, and the first thing these guys say is, welcome home, brother. I'm like, brother, why are you being so nice to me? In the back of my head, I'm like, I've always been out for myself. Everyone else has always been out for themselves. What is this place? So I get settled in. The bank calls me, and they say, yeah, you're not welcome back after what happened. And I was like, well, that wasn't a surprise. And, God was already working, and I had met another individual through this whole process who got me a job at an optometry clinic out of all places. And so I got to learn all about the eyes and the operations of eyes for the last year, well, 2 years ago for that last year. And I'm living in sober living, and I'm just trying to play catch up now. And I'm trying to do it while I'm working sober. And the leadership in that home just kept pouring into me, helping me see well beyond that it's not just about getting sober for us, but it's why did we get to that point? And I start to realize my entire life I was operating on how you were going to see me. What did I need to say? What did I need to wear? What did I need to drive? How much money did I need to make? And so, yeah, I was codependent 101. And I thought I was the most independent person in the world. Well, I realized those paths can cross. And so through, weekly Bible studies and working through the steps and sponsoring other individuals and having a community that wraps their arms around this house because they believe in what they're doing, I started to believe that people actually cared, and that there was a life that could be lived sober, where you could have fun, you could pursue Jesus, and not feel like it was that boring, nonchalant that I saw growing up. The have to go to church. And so last June, I get a call, and they say, "Hey, George, we've been keeping an eye
Let me
on."
back you up a little. I've got an idea what you're going to tell us, but before you do, how long had you been there at Hope is Alive by the time you got that call? Did you have plans, dreams, hopes? And then I certainly want to hear what you've got to say.
Yeah, so I went in on October 31st of 2024. And then, so I was there for roughly 9 months before that call came in.
Okay.
The dreams and hopes, I wasn't sure. I knew, I really didn't know. I was climbing the ladder very quickly at the optometry clinic. And so I thought, well, I'll just be a supervisor here, or a regional director or something along those lines. And so that's what I was pursuing at the time. I didn't know what that was going to look like. And the day that they told me they were looking at promoting me or sending me up further, I had also been asked, hey, would you ever, about 3 months prior, they said, hey, would you ever work for Hope is Alive? I was like, I'm not working for a ministry. Nope, I'm not a ministry guy. That's not me. I'm not going to, quote unquote, babysit 10 dudes in a sober living house. I will go crazy. I will fight one of them. That's not me. And then I find out that there's more positions than just the program managers. And I was like, well, what else is there? And they're like, well, we have a team that goes out and, builds relationships with folks in the community and gets them to support us. And they described that. And I said, well, that's what I do naturally. I just make friends. And they're like, we think you'd be perfect for it. I was like, yeah, I still am not sure. And so they asked me to pray about it, and I prayed about it. And over a couple of months, the answer that I got that was, when they call, you just say yes. The founder has us read one of his books when we first come into the program, and it's called Hope is Alive, and it tells his story. And one thing out of that whole book, I couldn't tell you anything in that book except one page where he stresses the importance of kind of what I was saying earlier, just say yes, step through that door. And so that was the answer I got from God, is if they call, to just say yes. And so the same day that this optometry clinic offers me a high-paying position, regional in Kansas, a big step towards those dreams. They also,
the old George would have jumped at, it sounds like to me.
100%. I also get a call from Oklahoma City, and they say, what do you think about coming and working for us as an intern with less pay? And you move. And I'm like, are you serious? I'm analyzing, I'm weighing the scale, and it's my heart wants to say, my mind wants to say, I'm taking the regional. But that little thought popped in my brain and said, just say yes. And so on the phone, I said, yep, I'll do it. Don't know what I'm saying yes to. And so August 5th of 2025, I'm packed up. I moved down here. I had no idea what it was going to look like. And I got to continue residency within Hope is Alive when I moved down here while beginning to work for the ministry. And so in a short 10 months now, roughly. I came on with our community development team, building those relationships. Kind of was ready for them to ship me off to one of our markets in the Carolinas or back to Wichita. And then our CEO, Mr. Lance Lang, said, nope, you're going to stay right here with me. And so I actually got pivoted to another team. And so now, today, I serve as the outreach manager for Hope is Alive, and we have 2 teams. And those teams are what I like to call boots on the ground. And they are either helping people get to treatment as we speak today, right now, outside this door. I got guys getting people to treatment, as well as our Hope Line team, who are taking about 10,000 calls a year for individuals who say, I give up, I need help, I don't know where to start. Will you please walk me through this? And so those 2 teams I get to work with very closely in making sure that we walk with those individuals hand in hand to get them help and offer the idea of the sober living that's worked for me, the faith aspect. It blows my mind saying it out loud, because some days I don't believe that I'm working for a ministry helping others come out of the same ruts that I was in.
Help me. Where's your mom in all of this? I know she played such a major role seeding this in your heart and spirit, and through her, her contacts prior to you being ready, and
Yep.
basically had the door open for you. Where's mom?
Yeah, so mom and dad are both still back home in the same town, same house I grew up in. They're thriving, retired, enjoying life. Mom loves her cats. Dad stays busy on projects. But the best thing is they're just so proud. They can sleep at night and they give all the glory to God, because they said they knew they couldn't do it, but they believed that their God could. They believed that our God could. And so they are doing phenomenal. The fact that I'm adopted, there's quite an age gap. So they're 71 and 70. So they're in that stage of life, and I'm in my middle 20s. And I forgot to mention that whole adoption story. The whole reason it happened is because I have a younger brother who's 11 months younger, and he was born with fetal alcohol syndrome from our biological mother. That's what prompted the whole, like, hey, these kids probably aren't in the best place. And so he was told that he would never walk, he would never talk, he would never get past middle school. Not only did he blow all of those restrictions out of the water, he got his welding certification, he works for an aviation company. He's a walking miracle. But he was another reason I felt I had so much pressure. I felt like I got the really good end of the stick and he got the not so good end, and I figured if I messed up, I was wasting what he wasn't given. And I can look at that differently today and say that God's got a plan for each of us, but I felt so much pressure to not mess up, and I felt like I messed up.
I'm thinking of the scripture that speaks about train up a child in the way they should go, and later they will not depart from it. And earlier, as you talked about your mom making the setup for you getting in Hope is Alive, I wrote down mom's faith. I don't know how many stories and, bios we've heard and shared. And so many times it goes back to a praying mother, a praying grandmother, somebody who believes in you before you believe in yourself, somebody who's lifting you up and preparing the path, just about like the prodigal son, that return, waiting on you to take the right step, and then you have to do it. They can't do it for you, but you've gotten it done, and you're in a good place here. So, what do you see as a goal for yourself in all of this, George, as far as whether it be professional or personal? Tell us kind of in a sentence or two or more who George is today and what he is about. And if the word sober comes in, okay, but I know it's much more than that.
Yeah, that's well beyond that. I seek to serve others every day through the eyes of Jesus. because I don't have to think about tomorrow, even though my brain wants to. And I don't have to worry about yesterday, because I'm here, I'm now. And He walked me out of where I was, and now I have the opportunity to serve others every day through His eyes. If I can do that every day, I'll be okay.
We all would. Yeah. My adage, my theme, so to speak, I want to become all that God's created me to be. Not so I can be better than anybody else other than myself. That would give the world my best self. Here's one for you as we get ready. We've got another 7, 8 minutes here. What would you like to say to your mom right here? And dad, I know you haven't mentioned dad as much, but I'm sure he's been a major and integral part of your healing and all. So what would you like to say to them, if they're listening or not?
Thank you for trusting something bigger than your own understanding. And thank you for never turning your back on me. Because without either one of you in my corner, I wouldn't be able to live in the fruit that I live in today. I don't know half the things that I put you guys through. But I do know that not once did you guys completely shut the door on me, even though it might have been easy to. And I'm forever grateful for that. Forever grateful.
What would you like to say to maybe a listener who has a similar background, the same basic struggles? What kind of advice would you like to share?
Yeah. If it feels like you're running in a circle every day and you don't know what tomorrow looks like, you're not supposed to. That's the way life is. We are not supposed to see what tomorrow looks like. And all of the fear, the anxiety, the circumstances that are holding you down right now, those are all lies of the devil. That is Satan's chains keeping you where you're at. And that if you will give 1%, 1% willingness to God through a prayer, through an ask, through a cry for help, 1%, He will fulfill. You just need that 1%. There is something better on the other side, as terrifying as it may be. But I
So you don't
promise you,
have to do it all at once. You don't have to even be all the way in. Is that what you're saying?
absolutely.
I agree 100%, by the way. If we could just creak that door open, even if we can't get our foot through it, we can see light from the other side. And then we just continue to move it and to budge it along. A final question here. As you well know, our podcast is Faith in Your Recovery. What do those 4 words mean to you, George? Faith in your recovery.
Man, right off the bat, I personally don't think recovery has a high chance of success if one, if you don't have faith in yourself, but two, faith in Jesus. I'm biased and I'll fight on that side of the fence every single time. If Jesus isn't involved, I wish you the best of luck. Jesus is the ultimate healer, the ultimate redeemer, the ultimate forgiver, the restorative king, and can take everything we've done, said, did, shame, lies, and he can wipe it. And all of those things are packed into addiction. So faith in your recovery, I think, is a lifestyle. It's a mindset, because every day I don't have to walk. Me personally, I like to use I statements because I don't want to tell anyone how to live their life. But if I do not walk with faith in Jesus in my recovery, I'm opening the door to Satan to come back and to drag me right back to where I was.
I have always had the personal belief in my 12 years of experience here. I think there's an outside shot at a chance that's very, very small without Jesus. But if you want to be free, freedom only comes from Him. And
Amen.
if you want your soul, your spirit, your hungers, anything else, to be able to live in the light of freedom, it's got to start or end with Him. Both.
He'll take you to the fruit. He'll take you all the way. You just got to let him guide.
Amen. Well, listen, thank you. God bless you on your continued journey, your work there at Hope is Alive. Thank you for the effort you're making for others, your willingness to serve, the difference you're making. I could go on a while, but just understand you're greatly appreciated. And thanks to your mom and dad. That blesses my heart. And God bless them. Folks, once again, here we are. We're at the end of this episode, but we're going to be back again before long and hope you'll join us. If you've ever got a need, get a hold of us. Our information's always available on screen. Look us up at ablbh.org. There are other ways to get a hold of us. We want to be there to help you, to direct you, to guide you, just to be a resource. There's much more available than what we can offer, and we're willing to share that with you because we want you to have the life that comes from never giving up, always remembering to stay in the battle. God bless. Thank you. We love you. Later.